Welcome back to my channel, guys. In this video I'm going to show you how to draft princess shoulder darts or shoulder bustier. These are the measurements needed for this pattern drafting. I will start out by marking out my top line, so I'm going to use 1 inch across, and this line also serves as shoulder line. Next, I'm going to mark my shoulder to nipple measurement. Mine is 11 inches and I'm going to mark that and create a horizontal line. Next, I'm going to create the shoulder to underbust. I'm going to mark the point. My shoulder to underbust point is 14 inches. So after creating the horizontal line for my shoulder to underbust point, I'm marking my shoulder to waistline point, and then I'm going to create a horizontal line as well. So this is the shoulder line, the bust line, the underbust line, and the waistline. So on the shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 15 inches divided by 2 is 7.5. So I've marked 7.5 on that point. So on the bust line, we're marking our nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 7 inches divided by 2. I've marked 3.5 there. I'll also do the same on the waistline. Then I'll use my ruler and create a straight line, connecting the point on my bust line to my waistline. Now I'm creating the neck depth and the neck width. So the neck width for me is 4 inches and the neck depth I'm going to be using 5 inches. After marking the neck depth, I will use my ruler to connect those points together. So from this point to this point, we're going to divide it by 2. Okay? So this is your neck, from here to here is your neck width, from here to here is your shoulder length. So if you mark what you have here, that's 3.5. So if you divide it by 2, so what you have there, you divide it by 2 and mark the point. So I'll connect this midpoint to the nipple point with my ruler. Now we're going to be working on our shoulder darts. On this point, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch. And on the other side, I'll mark 1 inch. So I'm using 1.5 inch as the total of my dart. I'm going to use my ruler to connect those points to my nipple to nipple points, therefore creating the shoulder dart. So now we're going to be creating our shoulder slope when we're going to transfer this 1.5 inch dart back on this line. So we're returning it now. We mark 1.5 inch. On that point, we'll come down by 1 inch. So I'll mark 1 inch below. I'll connect this point to neck width to create shoulder slope. So on this point, we're going to come down to determine our armhole depth. And the formula for armhole depth is bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. So mine is 7.5. I divided 36 by 6 plus 1.5. So this right here is my armhole depth. So on that point, I'll create a horizontal line. I'm going to be creating the dart, and this is the dart guide. So I'm using 2 inches for my dart. So on the waistline, I'll mark 2 inches from nipple to nipple point. And I'll do the same on my underbust as well. Mark 2 inches. And then connect the points on my underbust to my waist point. The underbust point, I'm going to be coming up by 1/2 inch. So I'll mark 1/2 inch starting from my underbust upward. And then connect that point to my dart line. So I'm going to use a curved ruler to connect these points together. So this is to finish our bust here. Now I'm going to be marking out my measurements. So on the chest line, which is the depth of armhole, I'm going to be marking my bust circumference. So now I'm going to elongate this line. So on the chest line, I'm going to be marking my bust circumference divided by 4, which is 9 inches. I've marked it there. So now we're going to measure the total of these darts and transfer it back on the chest line. If you don't do this, you're going to shorten your measurement after cutting out the pattern. So I'll mark that point right there, and that's going to serve as the bust point. So now I'm going to mark my waist point. So I'll divide my waist circumference by 4. Mine is 30 and divided by 4 is 7.5. I'll mark the 7.5. So you see this dart here, I'm going to transfer it on this other side. So I'll mark the 2 inches and transfer the dart. So now I'll connect my bust point to my waist point. So to create an armhole curve, I'm going to measure this point and mark the midpoint. So after marking the midpoint, so I'm going to come in by ½ inch and then connect this point to this point to that point with a curve to create an armhole. So using your French curve, you can use this, or you use your bare hand if you don't have the French curve. So this would have been the end of my pattern, but because I want a different neckline, I'm going to show you how to change the neckline to what I actually want. So to create the final neckline, I'm just going to come down on this point by 0.75 or 3/4 inch. So I'll mark 3/4 downwards. So I'll use my ruler to slant the line to my neck line. So on this point, I'm going to come up by ½ inch. So I'll come up by ½ inch and mark that point. So I'll use the curved end of my pattern master to connect the points together. I'm just going to erase this point that is no longer needed. On this point, I'm going to come in by 1 inch. So this is the maximum you can do on this point. Anything more than that will be too close to you. So now use the curved end of my ruler again to connect this point. Now we're going to be modifying our shoulder slope by extending it to the newly drawn neck width. So we'll connect that with a slant line. So this is our new shoulder slope. So this is the end of the front pattern. So now I'm just going to be cancelling out the darts. This is just to make it easier for me to remember where I'll be cutting from. So I'm also going to be cancelling out the shoulder darts. This is just to make it a bit easy because there are so much lines going on. So now when you have the darts cancelled out, you're a little bit less confused. So remember our new shoulder slope. I'm going to leave that and now cancel out the old one. So this new line is our new shoulder slope. Every other thing outside of that line is no longer part of your pattern. So to drop the back, I've marked out my top line as well as my zip allowance. That's 1 inch. So now I have my top line. I'm going to mark my bust point from my top line, which is also the shoulder line. So I'm marking 11 inches as my shoulder to nipple measurement. So now I'm going to create a horizontal line. So next I'm marking my shoulder to under bust measurement, which is 14 inches, just like I did in the front. So now I'm doing that and also marking the waist as well, shoulder to under bust and shoulder to waist measurement. So now I'm going to create my horizontal line for my under bust, and after that I'll do that for the waist. Just like we did in the front, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple point divided by 2, which is 3.5 inches. I'm marking that on my waistline as well. I'm going to use my ruler to connect it. Remember, this our initial neck width. We're going to replicate it. This initial neck width, we're going to replicate it on this point. So I'm going to measure it. We have 4 inches. So I'll pick the 4 inches and start from there and measure that 4 inches there, and I'll mark the point. All I did was to replicate this first initial neck width. This, not this last neck width. The first, not that one. The first initial one we did, that's what we replicated. So now I'm marking my shoulder width divided by 2, which is 7.5. I'll mark it right there. So now this is my neck width and this is my shoulder width. So you see these 2 points from here to here, I'll divide it by 2 and mark the midpoint. From that midpoint, I'll connect it to this point using my ruler. So now that I have done this, you see the neck width point is no longer useful. I'm going to clean it off. So using the front pattern, we're going to measure the recent neck width, the most recent neck width, which is from that point. And if I should measure it, it's about 3 inches. So now I'm going to replicate that on our back. So now I'm going to mark the depth of my back neckline, which is 1.5, and I'm going to mark 1.5 inch on that point. Now I'll use my curve end to connect my neckline. So to create back dart on this point, I'm going to come in by half an inch on both sides. So I'll mark half an inch on both sides. So mark half an inch, then use my ruler to connect those points to my nipple to nipple measurement to create the dart. On the shoulder width point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. I mark 1 inch, use my ruler to connect it to my neck width to create shoulder slope. So to measure the armhole depth, remember how we did it on the front. So bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. So I'm going to measure exactly what we have on the front, 7.5. You see how it is. So this same point, I'm going to replicate it on the back. Now I'll use the ruler to create a straight line. So this is our armhole depth. So we're going to extend the line by creating a horizontal line. So if you actually want, you can extend this horizontal line forward. It doesn't change anything. So now I'm going to mark the bust circumference. The bust circumference divided by 4 is 9 inches. I'm going to mark that 9 inches on this point. So on the waistline, I'm going to be marking my waist circumference divided by 4. My waist is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. I'm going to be marking 7.5 on this point. So I'll mark 7.5. So you see this dart, I'm going to measure it. I have 1 inch on that point and I will transfer it on this point. So now I'm going to use my ruler to connect the bust point to the waistline. So now all we're going to do is to create an armhole curve. So I'll just connect those points together. I'll connect this point to this point and that's it. We've created our armhole. So I'm going to extend my neck width to the zip allowance point. Center back on the waistline, I'm going to come in by half an inch. Also on the zip allowance, I'm going to come in by half an inch. So I'll connect that point slantly to my neck line. This is to reduce the bulkiness on the zip end. This is to help the zip sit nicely on the back. So I'm going to do the same on the other point. So I'll slant it again, connecting it to the waistline. So I'll extend the line and connect it. So I would label this as the zip allowance. That's the zip allowance. And after that, I'm going to cancel out the dart area just like I did on the front. I'm sure some of you will be wondering, when I'm drafting my pattern, I don't bother about the sewing allowance. I do my sewing allowance after I'm done with my pattern. So while I'm cutting, I cut and add my sewing allowances on the fabric. So this is the back and this is the front. I'm going to show you on my next video how to make this into a nice top. I hope you've learned something new today. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Thank you. See you on my next project. Bye.